Aloha, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this news conference about a whistleblower complaint filed against the Bank of America and possible other federal litigation to come. The Hawaii State Teachers Association is hosting this news conference because HSTA's Board of Directors recently approved a policy saying that HSTA believes our members and communities are better served when local families have stable housing, and therefore HSTA supports efforts to hold banks and mortgage lenders accountable to their promises of home loans to Native Hawaiians. We're going to hear from a number of people today from Maui and from across the country on this important issue. And we're going to start off with some opening remarks from Brandon Maka'awa, who is the president of Nā Poʻe Kōkua. Brandon?
Aloha, Keoki, aloha HSTA, mahalo for having us, hosting us on this platform. I'd like to start off by showing appreciation to Maui County, to Mayor Victorino, to everyone who has helped in this fight. This fight originally started on Maui 27 years ago. This was holding Bank of America accountable for a $150 million commitment that they haven't fulfilled yet. From 1994 to 1998, they were supposed to provide $150 million in Hawaiian homes beneficiary loans so that our people can have a more stable future, housing, building equity in a struggling place for Hawaiians. And Bank of America is yet to fulfill that commitment. They were supposed to fulfill this commitment in order for them to take over Liberty Bank. So they committed this to the Federal Reserve, not just our people, but the Federal Reserve. So this commitment is real. They were supposed to finish it in 1998 and they didn't. In 1998, they wanted to merge with one of the largest banks in America, Nations Bank. And in order for them to merge with this bank, we held them accountable. Our organization, Nā Poʻe Kōkua, as well as the Hawaii Fair Lending Coalition. And so Kathy Besant from Bank of America flew down here to meet with our kupuna and Hawaii Fair Lending Coalition. And they worked out an agreement to recommit to this commitment, $150 million, okay? Because this commitment was late and wasn't done, it was they actually only did 3% of this commitment in that 4-year span. We actually made them correlate a second commitment, which was to help Hawaiians create a Hawaiian-owned and controlled bank where Hawaiians would all be shareholders in, so that we can build an economic foundation for our future, for our keiki, and to develop new avenues for our people to help with our problems here. This commitment, again, has not been fulfilled. In 2007, they were let out of this commitment prematurely. But in 2012, DHHL's new director found out that they didn't fulfill the commitment and recommitted to this commitment. 20 years after the 1998 recommitment, Governor David Ige sent a letter to Kathy Besant asking her to come to Hawaii to settle this commitment with the Hawaiian people, with Nā Poʻe Kōkua, our organization. She ignored it. So we got the counties involved, specifically Maui County. And so they took action on their own. And we'll hear more about that from Keani Rollins Fernandez, who is the Maui County Vice Chair. But I'd like to now acknowledge a strong supporter of ours for a bunch of years, even before he was mayor, but Maui Mayor Mike Victorino. I'd like to acknowledge his presence in here and tell him mahalo for all your support, Mayor.
Hello, everyone. And, thank you and mahalo for what you're doing. This is a real long, drawn out issue that needs to get resolved. And we're here to support you in that respect. And we have stood strong from the beginning. And I think by standing strong, we'll be able to accomplish what we have set out to do. So I wish you well. I won't go into a lot of details because I think Ms. Rollins has more details, and I prefer having the time to listen to all of you instead of speaking to you. So mahalo and God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Maui Mayor Michael Victorino. Next, we're going to hear from our attorney. He is a former Miami prosecutor who's been fighting banks over fraudulent and unfair foreclosures for many years. Bruce Jacobs, all the way from Miami, Florida. Bruce?
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this fight. I've had my own fight with Bank of America in Florida for 12 years. I've been doing this. And to me, the issues that we keep seeing are these banks seem to have a business model, which is that they're going to deprive people of their property without due process of law. And there's a pattern. We see it over and over again. These banks commit illegal acts, they get caught, they cut a deal. Nobody goes to jail. They make some promises that they decide whether they're going to keep. And usually they don't. They go right back to whatever it is that they want to do because they're banks. And when you fight them, what they'll do is send out an army of lawyers and lobbyists. And those guys can lie and cheat as they need. So I've been really honored to be asked by Nā Poʻe Kōkua to join them in this fight. And something I really feel strongly about is that NPK is asked nicely. The governor of Hawaii asked Bank of America nicely. The Hawaii State Senate, all the counties of Hawaii have all said to Bank of America, come to Hawaii. It's beautiful out here. Come and work this out. And Bank of America ignored them. So that's over. Today is the last chance to resolve this amicably. Because today, on behalf of Nā Poʻe Kōkua, I filed a Dodd-Frank Act complaint. And what it says is that Bank of America should have disclosed to all of its investors a long time ago that this was coming, that there are substantial material risks that Bank of America faces because they're engaged in RICO conduct. Now, what is RICO? It's a federal statute. You usually hear about it. It involves the mobsters and the mafia, but it's a law. And it says that when a bank and their lawyers and lobbyists are engaged in systemic fraud, that's RICO. That's not acceptable. And that is something that we can use to fight back. So if this doesn't bring Bank of America to the table, if we're not going to resolve with them, I'm very much looking forward to the opportunity to filing this RICO lawsuit in federal court, seeking class action certification for it, and making sure that Bank of America is held accountable. Because if you have an army of lawyers and lobbyists and they lie to the governor, they lie to Nā Poʻe Kōkua, they lie to the Department of Justice, they lie to the federal regulators, they lie to the courts, that's a criminal enterprise and that's not acceptable. And we should hold them accountable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Counselor. Next, we go back to Maui now, and we're going to hear from the Maui County Council Vice Chair, Keani Rollins Fernandez. Council member?
Mahalo Kioki, and mahalo to HSTA for organizing this important news conference. As Brandon mentioned in his opening remarks, this fight to hold Bank of America accountable started on Maui, and we're proud to see this fight through, this fight for justice all the way through. In November 2018, the council unanimously passed a resolution supporting the governor's effort to intervene between Nā Poʻe Kōkua, the Hawaii Fair Lending Coalition, and Bank of America to reach a settlement agreement relating to a $150 million loan commitment for Native Hawaiians on Hawaiian homelands. After Governor Ige's efforts did not yield the desired results, in October 2019, the council unanimously adopted a resolution to authorize the employment of special counsel to investigate actionable claims against Bank of America and the banking and mortgage industry, citing wrongful foreclosure and bad acts or failures to act committed by the banking and mortgage industry exacerbated Maui County's affordable housing crisis. It negatively impacted Maui County's economy and have resulted in decreased real property tax revenue and increased the county's expenditures related to housing and social services throughout Maui County. And this includes Bank of America's failure to fulfill loan commitments to Native Hawaiians, Filipinos, and others as described in the Federal Reserve Bulletin issued on July 1994. Special counsel then presented to the council in July 2020, and upon determining a strong legal case the county had against Bank of America, the county council unanimously adopted a resolution to contract special counsel to file legal claims against Bank of America and other mortgage lenders for failure to fulfill loan commitments, fraudulent foreclosures, and similar unlawful conduct. Within 3 hours of voting to take legal action against Bank of America, its high-paid attorneys filed a meritless lawsuit against the county. In December 2020, the U.S. District Court Judge J. Michael Seabright dismissed Bank of America's lawsuit against the County of Maui, pointing to the fact that the county hasn't yet filed a lawsuit. Judge Seabright called the bank's move a big-pocketed preemptive strike against the county, correctly stating that most parties don't have the resources to make this kind of preemptive strike, that he didn't yet know what the county was going to claim, and neither did they. The lawsuit also denied this $150 million commitment and stated that if there was a commitment, that they honored it, and neither of that is true. Our county stands firm, as Mayor Victorino said, in seeing this through on behalf of all of our Maui County residents. Mahalo.
And mahalo, council member. Next, we're going to go back to the continental United States, this time to Washington, D.C., and we're going to hear from the co-director for the Committee for Better Banks. His name is Nick Weiner. And the Committee for Better Banks is a coalition of bank workers, community and consumer advocacy groups, and labor organizations joined together to improve conditions in the banking industry. Nick?
Mahalo, Keoki, and it's an honor to be here with everyone. The Committee for Better Banks calls on Bank of America to live up to its commitments to the Hawaiian people. Bank workers are committed to serving the best interest of their customers and expect the giant banks they work for to fulfill their obligations, especially to disadvantaged and underserved communities in need of access to capital to build wealth through home ownership. The Communications Workers of America helped form the Committee for Better Banks to bring frontline bank workers together to improve their working conditions so workers have the job security to stand up against predatory sales goals and cross-selling, so workers can speak out if they are being pressured to push products on customers that they may not need, cannot afford, or even know about. It was the members of the Committee for Better Banks at Wells Fargo who spoke out and helped expose the toxic culture that led to the fake account scandal. And it was members of the Committee for Better Banks who exposed that pay for bank tellers was so low that 1/3 had to rely on public assistance to make ends meet. The public outcry pressured all the major banks to increase their minimum pay to $15 an hour, including Bank of America, which went further, announcing its minimum pay will be $20 an hour. But as you've heard, Bank of America still has a long way to go. The bank, with $2.8 trillion in total assets and roughly $17 billion in profits last year, can afford to keep its promises to the Hawaiian people. Unfortunately, Bank of America and other mega banks are so big, they feel like they do not have to be accountable to anyone because they can afford to pay millions, even billions, of dollars in fines for violating consumer protection laws, and it's just the cost of doing business. That is why we need the systemic change being called for today to prevent this fraudulent behavior that's ripping off communities from happening in the first place. Empowered frontline bank workers who have a seat at the table with collective bargaining rights is a missing piece of the puzzle to a more just, fair, and equitable banking system. For example, regulators could create independent advisory councils consisting of frontline workers who could help examiners gain insight into what is really going on inside these megabanks. We hope the new Biden administration will look closely at meaningful ways to implement policies that empower bank workers. Doing so could help make sure that Bank of America's promises to the Hawaiian people are finally kept. Because when bank workers are empowered to improve their jobs and customer service and the communities they live in, we will all be better off. Mahalo.
And mahalo to you. Thank you so much, Nick Weiner from the Committee for Better Banks in Washington, D.C. Finally, and importantly, we end up where everything began, back on Maui. And we're going to throw things over to Ian Chan Hodges. He's the coordinator for the Hawaii Fair Lending Coalition. Ian?
Mahalo, Keoki. And again, I want to thank HSTA for hosting this. Really appreciate all your work on behalf of course, teachers in our communities. I wanted to sort of go off of what Nick was just saying and talk about the systemic problems we're facing, because I think Maui County, with the strong support of the efforts of Nā Poʻe Kōkua and the Hawaii Fair Lending Coalition, actually are leading the way in not only addressing the issues we've been talking about with Bank of America's lack of fulfillment of its commitment to Native Hawaiians, but also to the larger picture of how banks actually, a big bank like Bank of America can get away with this for so long. And to put this in perspective, when we first started this fight, my two boys were just learning how to walk. And my youngest son in May will graduate from college. So this fight's been going on for a long time. And one of the reasons is because, as many people have actually already talked about during this conference, there are systemic problems that we have to deal with. And some of those deal with the regulators and the fact that there's a revolving door. Some of the regulators with lawyers who work for the regulators and go ahead and work for the banks. And so what Nick Weeder was talking about, the Committee for Banks, is important as far as having frontline workers at the banks be able to, when they see something going wrong, protect their communities and actually the shareholders as well, and be able to have the opportunity to report that. And I want to also thank again Maui County, because Maui County has actually led the way, and Mayor Victorino. I know before you were even elected mayor, you wrote a very strong letter to the CEO of Bank of America talking about what it means to actually understand kuleana and responsibility and keeping your commitments. And we really appreciate that and all the work you've done since then. And we definitely appreciate the leadership that Maui County Council has shown, not only in the resolution they've adopted that was followed by the other 3 counties in Hawaii, but also taking action they have with retaining special counsel. And I think what we're actually looking for here, as Bruce mentioned earlier, is Bank of America has been asked very nicely to show up back in Hawaii by our governor, by our state senate, by our counties to resolve this issue. And so we're asking for that again. And we'd like to see happen is basically for a just resolution to this issue and for a settlement that actually deals with the fact that there's been over 2 decades of unfulfilled commitment for the $150 million for the creation of a Native Hawaiian bank, and also for the creation of a sovereign wealth fund that would actually fund housing and public education in Hawaii. And finally, for the systemic changes that Nick Weiner referred to be able to actually have frontline workers at Bank of America have the opportunity without fear for their jobs to report any wrongdoing they see. And again, thank you for everyone for being involved in this over the last 2 decades. And we look forward to a just resolution with Bank of America. Mahalo.
And mahalo, Ian, and all of you folks. Thank you so much for the great overview. And now we're going to have some questions for our viewers who are watching on streaming. We have a reporter in the Zoom here with us who's going to be asking some questions, and I might throw in 1 or 2 as well. So let's go to Melissa Tanji from Maui News. I believe she has a question first for the Maui County officials, for either Mayor Victorino or Council Vice Chair Rollins Fernandez. And Melissa, can you unmute and ask your question? Thank you.
Sure. Mahalo, everybody. And this is either for Mayor Victorino or Vice Council Chair Kiani Rollins Fernandez. I wanted to check and see, what is the county doing? I know Nā Poʻe is going in with a suit, but what's Maui County going to do legally?
Mahalo, Mayor Victorino, and mahalo, Melissa, for your question. And quick correction, it's Maui County Council Vice Chair. So as I stated, we've retained special counsel and we've contracted the legal firm of Marjorie Bronster, and they are getting their, putting together their case. And so that's in the works right now.
And the administration supports that and has been working very closely.
Absolutely. Mahalo, Mayor.
Thank you. And then Melissa, you said you had another question for Bruce Jacobs, our bank fraud and bank attorney from Florida. Is that right, Melissa?
Yes, and I apologize, Kiani, getting kind of nervous here. So I know you're the Maui County Council Vice Chair. Mr. Jacobs there, can you explain to me what you filed today? I just want to make sure I got that clear.
So there's a number of tools that you can use now to fight banks. One of them is the Dodd-Frank Act. And this was done during the Obama administration, right after the crash. And what it allowed is that anyone can file a whistleblower complaint if they're the original source of the information to say that the company is not doing something they're supposed to do. So every bank, every corporation is supposed to make sure that their investors understand when there's risks that they're facing. If there's something significant that's going to happen, like they're going to get sued for RICO, that they're going to have the people of Nā Poʻe Kōkua saying that there's a bank that would be worth billions of dollars today, but you defied your commitments and then lied about it and engaged in a criminal enterprise. That is a risk that the investors should know happened and should have the ability to decide whether they want to stay investors. And the fact that Bank of America did not disclose these risks and took actions to stop us from even getting to the position that we're in today, and actively went out to try to interfere with what we were doing and stop it from going forward, was all designed to make it so they don't have that they're not going to disclose this fraud that's going on to their investors. So under the Dodd-Frank Act, we're able to file that whistleblower complaint. Now the SEC, which Mr. Gensler is now the new chairman of the SEC. He's someone who has made a name for himself as being a stern regulator, someone who's willing to take on these large banks, the Biden administration. I mean, all of these issues that we're dealing with, Bank of America is a party to the $25 billion national mortgage settlement, and they are committing fraud on the court after they promised to stop doing it. That's a serious risk that the investors should know is going on. And that's why we filed that Dodd-Frank Act complaint today. And this is the last step that we'll take before we go in and we just make this a federal RICO case and we take it from there.
And Melissa, the complaint that Mr. Jacobs refers to was filed this morning, Hawaii time, by Brandon Maka'avaava, who gave the opening statement today. He filed that federal whistleblower complaint with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission this morning, and I put a link to it in the chat, Melissa, so you can grab that Google link and take a look at that at your leisure. And Melissa, do you have any other follow-up questions?
Maybe one for Brandon there. I mean, how do you and your people feel? I mean, waiting, for so long for this.
We feel hurt, Melissa. I personally feel hurt for the kupuna that are no longer here, that originally took on this fight. I'm the next generation. I'm the new president of Nā Poʻe Kōkua, but this organization was started by kupuna on Maui. Their dream was to have affordable housing options for Hawaiians. And that dream got crushed by this commitment not being fulfilled. So I personally feel hurt, but I think all of Hawaii should feel hurt by Bank of America not fulfilling this commitment, because if you solve the issues with Hawaiians and you help Hawaiians get into Hawaiian homelands where they belong, this could solve issues all over the state for non-Hawaiians, for people that are renting right now, that we're fighting each other for houses. We have a housing program. What they need is banks to be allowed to fund this and for banks to give beneficiaries the opportunities to have loans. But what it's not happening right now is banks are still not loaning to beneficiaries here in Hawaii. And so Bank of America had a commitment to start doing that, and they failed that commitment. So it has set back our people a long way, and you're seeing it today. Now, the HHO is having to come up with an idea, building a casino to help with housing. The issue is housing, and Bank of America had a direct mandate and a direct commitment to fulfill this. It's not like a charity. They got something out of it. They got to merge with other banks. They got to grow their wealth while we were stuck over here holding the bag. So it's personal for us, Melissa, but you know, we're committed. We're resolute to finish this fight for our kupuna that is still here today and the kupuna that is not here with us anymore.
Thank you so much, Brandon. And if you don't mind, I do have a question for Bruce Jacobs. You touched on this earlier in your opening remarks. And so to be clear, right, there's this federal SEC complaint that Brandon made this morning. That's a whistleblower complaint, but you're also talking about, you know, that Bank of America is guilty of violating federal RICO or racketeering statutes. Can you give us a little more specifics there of, and that's the pending lawsuit there. Specifically in this case, in the case of, you know, Maui and Hawaii, how is Bank of America guilty of breaking those racketeering laws that, as you said, are often used against, you know, mafia, organized crime folks?
Okay, I mean, that's a great question. So we're following a case that was brought by farmers from Hawaii against the DuPont Chemical Company about 20 years ago. And what they were doing was the DuPont company had sold a product that they knew was going to destroy all the crops. And they destroyed all the crops all over the country. And when they got sued for destroying the crops, the company said, we didn't know it was going to do that, which was a total lie. And over the course of years, they won a lot of cases and did a lot of things that were helpful for DuPont and bad for the farmers, until someone finally proved that they knew all along. And they were committing fraud on the courts, and it was across the nation. So these farmers in Hawaii took it a step further and said, well, we're going to sue you under the RICO statute. And what they said was, because the DuPont company and their lawyers were a criminal enterprise, that means that when they're engaged in that systemic fraud, that means they're engaged in mail fraud, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice, which are felonies, which are serious crimes. And that's what RICO is designed to prevent and to punish. So another thing is, you know, the fact that they have been lying to everyone who's asked, the regulators, the governor, the counties, that there's never been a commitment. And if there was one, they honored it. They just told that to a federal judge. And that's not true. There was a commitment and it wasn't honored. You can tell by looking in the public records, there's like $13 million worth of FHA 247 loans on record, period. So there was never a commitment that was fulfilled. Yet they have, the lawyers and lobbyists are part of the criminal enterprise that are using this false statement, this fraud, this mail fraud, wire fraud, and obstruction to deprive the Nā Poʻe Kōkua of their bank, to deprive these Native Hawaiians of their of the money they need to develop their homelands. And just like for me in Florida, the lawyers are committing fraud on the courts in foreclosures. They're committing forgery, perjury, destroying evidence, backdating records, defying court orders. You know, this is something that is obstruction of justice. It's fraud, and that is the. We both have the same problem here in Florida, and it's actually the foreclosure world is national. So it's Ohio, it's Florida, it's Hawaii, it's New York, it's all of these states where these banks are there acting as if it's okay because people didn't pay their mortgage, which I get, but at the same time, a lot of people would be willing to pay a mortgage if they would just work with them. And if they're committing fraud, they don't have to. And that's been the problem that we've been seeing. People shouldn't lose their homes. Fraudulent foreclosure is not due process. So the RICO statute was designed for all kinds of criminal activity, including criminal activity by banks.
Thank you so much. And we thank you all for joining us today and for this news conference. And we invite you to share the links to this live stream on both HSTA's Facebook page or our YouTube channel with folks who you know will be interested in this topic. Please share it far and wide, because this is a very important mission advocating for affordable housing for Native Hawaiians here in Hawaii. And we thank you for joining us today. We thank our panel of folks from across the country and across the state for joining us on this important issue. We hope you all have a good day. Aloha and a hui hou.
Aloha and mahalo
Aloha.
to all of you, especially HSTA. Mahalo.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Aloha.